All right, let's journey back about 2,000 years to unpack a fight over food. I know, it sounds a little strange, but stick with me. Because hiding inside this ancient squabble is a timeless conflict about freedom, community, and the wild idea that sometimes using your rights can actually hurt other people. I mean, think about it. It's a question we all bump into. But for this one ancient community, this wasn't just some philosophical debate. It was a real, messy, daily conflict that was threatening to tear them apart. And how they figured it out? Well, it's surprisingly relevant for us today. Okay, so first up, a fight over food. And to really get what was going on, we have to picture the scene. We're in the ancient city of Corinth, and the whole problem seemed to be about something that, to us, sounds totally bizarre. So, Corinth. Think of a major, bustling city, a real cultural melting pot, and temples were everywhere. The big controversy was this. Was it okay for the new Christians in town to eat meat that had first been offered up in a pagan ritual? It's a weird debate for us now, right? But here's the twist. This was so much more than just a diet choice. You see, these temple banquets were the ancient world's version of a Wall Street power lunch or an exclusive country club. It's where the deals got done, where you networked. So for the city's rich and powerful, skipping these meals meant walking away from their entire world of influence, money, and social standing. All right, section 2, the strong versus the weak. As you can probably guess, this whole situation created a massive divide, splitting the community right down the middle. On one side, you had the strong. These were the elites, the ones with knowledge. They were like, come on, these idols are just stone and wood. The meat is just meat. We have the right, the Greek word is exousia, to eat it. But then on the other side, you had the weak. These were often folks who were newer to the faith, and for them, their conscience was screaming, no way, that meat is connected to idol worship, it's tainted. And this gets right to the heart of it. If the elites were technically correct, and they were, idols are nothing, then what was the big deal? Well, the real problem wasn't the food at all. It was about the psychological and spiritual damage their freedom was causing to other people. And that brings us to section 3, rethinking your conscience. To really grasp the kind of damage we're talking about, we have to completely rewire how we think about what the conscience even is. You know, most of us think of our conscience as this little judge on our shoulder, telling us right from wrong. But that's not quite right. A better way to think about it is that the conscience is a witness. It doesn't write the law, it just testifies to the laws that are already written down in your personal worldview. Let's break it down. Imagine your worldview is the city's law book. An action happens, say, eating that idol meat. That's the data. Your conscience is like a policeman on patrol. It sees the action, pulls out the law book, and checks. Does this violate any of the rules? If it does, boop, boop, the alarms go off in your head, and you feel that internal pain, that conflict. The key thing here is the conscience is just enforcing the rules it's been given. And this is where we see the real danger. When the strong were pressuring the weak to eat the meat, they were forcing them to violate their own internal rulebook before that rulebook had been updated. It's like it completely short-circuits their moral wiring. It just wrecks a person's ability to make sound judgments for themselves. So, a weak conscience doesn't mean it's broken or faulty. Not at all. It just means that person's worldview is still under construction. It's developing. The conscience itself is working perfectly. It's just testifying based on an older set of beliefs. Okay, so what's the solution? This leads us to section 4, Paul's surprising sacrifice. The writer of this letter, the Apostle Paul, basically steps in and says, let me show you how it's done. He holds himself up as the ultimate example of how someone with knowledge and status should behave. Paul lays out his resume. He says, look, if we're talking about rights, I've got them. As an apostle, he had the right to get paid for his ministry, the right to have his food and drink covered, the right to be married, the right to not have a side hustle to make a living. He makes it crystal clear that in terms of authority, he's at the top. He had all the authority, all the exousia he needed to claim every single one of those rights. But then he does something absolutely radical. He chose to use none of them. He didn't demand payment. He worked with his own hands to support himself. And the big question is, why? And that's our final section, beyond the call of duty. Because Paul's motivation here unlocks this incredible principle about where you find real honor. And it's probably not where you'd expect. Paul explains it like this. He says, listen, preaching the gospel, that's my job. I'm compelled to do it. It's the trust that was given to me. You don't get a medal for just showing up and doing what you're required to do. That's just the baseline. And here's the profound difference. The real honor, the boast or reward that Paul is after, it's not found in just doing your duty. No, it's found when you go above and beyond your duty by willingly sacrificing a right that you are totally entitled to. That is the game changer. That's where the true honor is found. So the message to those Corinthian elites was unmissable. You want status? You want real honor? Then stop flaunting your right to go to these banquets. The real power move, the most honorable thing you can do, is to sacrifice that right for the well-being of the people in your community who are still growing. And so this ancient fight over food ends up teaching us something so important. The more knowledge, freedom, or status you have, the greater your responsibility is to consider those who don't. Your rights don't exist in a vacuum. This leaves us with a pretty challenging question to think about, especially today. In a world that's so obsessed with demanding our rights, what freedom or privilege might you be called to voluntarily lay down for the good of someone else?